Universal Studios Hollywood has never been really a theme park of some sorts. When it opened back in 1915, it was this film studio lot just dedicated to film production and all those shenanigans. Until the 1964, where Universal Studios opened the studio tour. And then that's when Universal found its foot in the theme park place. But up until recently, around the 90s to 2000, early 2010s, Universal Hollywood has become, well, a fully fledged theme park. But there was one problem. It never really had an outdoor high throw coaster until now. Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift opened sometimes this year, but the thing is, earlier this year, Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift at Orlando was announced also. And people are quick to assume that that ride in Orlando is much better than ours, even though there is no official layout or anything at all of the coaster. Just a name, and that's it. Well, I'm here to argue that why Hollywood Drift at Hollywood will be way better than Hollywood Drift Orlando. So, to keep it short, we'll call one Orlando Drift and then the other one Hollywood Drift. But let's get started. People are quick to assume that Orlando's will be much better than this. There's like a very few things that people just jump to the finish line saying, oh, it's gonna be better. Why? Because it's in Orlando and it's bigger. We'll get more into that later on. But just because it's set in Orlando and its stats are said to be monstrous doesn't mean anything. My favorite example of this is Maverick at Cedar Point. Back in the old days, early 2000s, the coaster wars, where every single company was trying to make the biggest and the best coaster they can possibly do. Biggest, fastest, like Top Thrill, Dragster, Kingda, Millennium Force, etc. All those coasters were always fighting to get that number one spot to be that best coaster in the world. But then, Maverick, this also by Intamin, comes into the chat and it's a smaller coaster, like around 1.5 times like less of the height or like something like that, smaller than Kingda and Dragster, and it just completely ends the coaster wars because it's, some say it's incredibly paced, like very fun elements, it's intense and a small form factor. So just because you're bigger doesn't mean anything, absolutely nothing. If it's gonna be better, faster, that doesn't mean anything. So people who are saying online that, oh, it's gonna be much better in Orlando, just wait. Just please wait before you quick to assume. And it gets me angry because people have been waiting for a ride like this, especially at Hollywood, to come finally, and we have it here, and then now we're being diminished or like put down because of Orlando. And it's crazy because, we're the first park, we're the first Universal park, and we're still being treated with disrespect from the Orlando greed. I like to call it Orlando greed. I love people in Orlando, but it's greed. But anyways, yeah, and there'll be more points later up. So, let's keep going. And as of now, people have it wrong. Like, when I say have it wrong, it's, the stats. It's the stats that kind of, set everything off. So, Hollywood Drift just completed. Congratulations. Everyone who's working on the coaster, I congratulate you. But the 170-foot spike. And it is an awesome element. I'll give you that. But people also don't know that the elevation change here in Hollywood Drift, here in Hollywood, is more than 170 feet, by the way. And it actually reaches that point. Yeah, I think it's like around 160 to 180 feet of elevation change. So from the bottom of the launch to the top of the stall, that's over 100 and something, like over 180 or something like that. I'm not sure, but it's somewhere in that range. And it does reach it. The Hollywood Drift in Orlando, or Orlando Drift, it's a 170-foot spike at the top. But you won't reach that top. You're gonna reach around the 150 to 160 range. It's a spike, you're not gonna reach the top. So people are saying it's bigger, it's better. Yet Hollywood here is much of an elevation change, kind of, bigger in a sense. So that's a part that doesn't make sense too. Another point I'm trying to make is that Hollywood Drift's limitations, because if you're following this coaster and anything generally Universal Studios Hollywood, is that Universal Studios Hollywood is limited on basically everything. So not only in space, but also sound. Here in LA, we have very strict zoning rules. So sound is like really big and all that stuff. And Hollywood Drift, it's a coaster, there's gonna be screaming, there's gonna be people screaming, and you're gonna be hearing that all over the valley, and same with space. And I think that the way that this ride uses space, uses it better than Orlando does. And it's just a matter of fact that if you're here, you could see it, This goes up and down Hollywood Hills. Like, I don't think you've ever seen a coaster, not even, like the only close thing that I could think of kind of like this that's nearby is Tatsu. But this takes it to another level, interacting with guests. And that's another point that's really strong with this ride. It's guest interaction. Orlando Drift won't really interact with his guests because, it's in a confined space. It's between sound walls and inside the park, This goes over the escalators and then also goes over the queue, which already does it 10 times better, because if you're following Hollywood Drift construction updates in Orlando, you can see that the queue is far away from the coaster. So, we're still pretty early on that, so we've got to give it some time to see if there's any more guest interactions. But as of now, when it comes to guest interactions, this does it way better than Orlando. So that's another key factor, that our Hollywood Drift does so much better than Orlando Drift. And to add more on the location, the hillside gives more pops of airtime. And right now, Orlando's, it has airtime hills. But are you going down on hills? Like, if you've been here in Hollywood and you've seen the San Fernando Valley, it is majestic and beautiful, that Orlando doesn't have. And for people to assume, oh, we have a better coaster, that's kind of bizarre. Like, when I talk about guest interaction, look at this. Orlando will not have that, and it's like pretty clear not. Probably the only type of guest interaction the ride will have is probably the spike, or on the HHN area where you go inside the sound stages. There's like a giant airtime hill, or I don't know what it is, but there's an element right there where if they do let you go by there during HHN, that's going to be the only time of guest interaction. So, it's a matter you have to be here. But we're going to have more points later on right now. And another point is, if rumor has it and rumor's right, Hollywood Drift here at Hollywood will be more of a spinning coaster than back in Orlando. Due to its limitations, we're going to add more on the limitation sides, is that in Orlando, you don't have all these sound problems that Hollywood has. So, really, Universal, knocked two birds with one stone, in where this ride rotates to direct sounds into different, positions, not, straight to neighborhoods, straight to the studios. So, since Orlando doesn't have studios, doesn't have, households near it, there's no necessity to, really spin. And rumor, like I previously mentioned, rumor has it that Orlando won't really be a spinning coaster. It'll still be a drifting coaster, just not really spinning, and ours will spin more 360 degrees. And to add more on the airtime and forces, just the way that since our layout is a little more tight and more confined, it, like our spaghetti boat here is more tight, like I just mentioned. So it means more forces, it's more powerful. Right now, I think it's 3.6 Gs. So you're gonna feel like you weigh 3.6 times heavier than you actually are. And I think Orlando right now, it looks, it looks pretty intense. It's, from some clips, I'll play over them. But it looks more spread out. Like that overbank turn looks more spread out than our stall. So many elements are more spread out because you have the space to do it. And our limitations help us more to achieve a more intense coaster. And another point is kinetic energy. Kinetic energy here on Hollywood kind of adds on more to the guest interactions, in where it interacts with the guests, going over them in the queue, going on site, going below them, and you achieve, a sense of, I wouldn't say wonder, but also, a sense of how big and, you know, how much, thought has been put in this ride. And then I feel like all that is being thrown out the window when people are saying, oh, Orlando's gonna be way better. Oh, it's much bigger. No, 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 this and that. And I think that is why we're getting many like people online complaining, arguing for the most unnecessary stuff. And for the people out there who, continue complaining, and will probably complain here, be there and then you could say something. Because the majority of people who complain about this ride probably have never set foot in this park. So before you leave, negative comments or, something like outrageous and like stupid, come to the park and then say something. And then we could have a thought out and good conversation. But as of now, it's not looking good. All right, I want to add one more thing of when it comes to airtime. Right here, I don't know if you can see it. Up here, just look at this airtime right here. The airtime here, you will not get in Orlando, just due to the fact it's a flat space. Just whoa, straight down. And then the best piece of airtime I see in Orlando is in that launch before the spike and that S-bend. But it's it's mostly pops of airtime, not really seconds of airtime like in many like let's say in a hypercoaster or in a Giga, kind of like that. So we just, of course, we gotta wait and see. So one thing I will give to Orlando is, since this is a new gen Intamin ride, we will have problems here in Hollywood, in the sense that since it's new, it's gonna be harder to operate because it's a new tech, and operators still need to train and fit into their new rides. Same with Intamin. And since Orlando's getting it around a year after, everything that they learn here will be transferred over there, so it'll be much easier for them to operate the coaster than it is here. So that's one part I'll give to Orlando. A small one I'll also give to Orlando is the color scheme. I do think that the color scheme here is nice, right? It's this, this dark gray color, but the thing is, it kind of looks like Hollywood trying to be, Velocicoaster. Yeah, we don't have Velocicoaster, so let's have our own counterpart. So it kind of looks not like a cheap knockoff in a sense, but our equivalent to fight. Not in a fight sense, but there's people who come here who watch videos of Orlando like, oh, how come we don't have a Velocicoaster? And us having this dark gray one makes it seem, oh, this is our Velocicoaster counterpart, which could be cool in some sense, but in a way, it's just, it seems like, oh, we're trying to be like Orlando. And then one last thing I will give to Orlando, it is more space. yes, I was talking about limitations being helpful for this ride, but not everything, not everything, is sunshine and rainbows. Them having more space means they could do more stuff. The spacing out part, I'll still give it here, but they have crazy elements like the spike. They have that crazy cool element. I was talking, I was throwing shade at it, but it is still a cool element. And the way that um, it has that overbank turn, which is also nice, I will give it that too. And yeah. So I think, having more space also helps the coaster, breathe out, space out, because in the end, this is still technically not the longest coaster in the world. I mean, of course it's not. It's just, the first half is mini helix, airtime hill, inversion, brake run. And then the second half is backwards launch, dive loop, stall, over the escalators, and then the final inversion, and that's it. And in Orlando, it's looking crazy. Having more space, it is a benefit. And that's something I will give to Orlando. No shade at anyone, not at the folks at Intamin, because they're doing an amazing job. It's really more shade at the people who jump to conclusions. The people who are saying Orlando Drift will be a much better coaster than Hollywood Drift, even though they haven't even seen an official layout or anything. And it's just crazy that this is basically, the theme park world as of now. And I'm just saying, we should mature enough where we wait and then we can judge, or people too. Don't say anything when you haven't even been to it. So both rides will be fantastic, phenomenal, world-class coasters. That is a fact. That's something I can say. They will both be phenomenal coasters, like top tier in North America. I'm just saying, Universal Studios Hollywood has been needing this ride since the last, I don't know, since the park has turned into a major theme park back in the early 2000s. And I'm excited for the future of this park. I can't wait to see what it is. And if I grind your gears, you can argue in the comments, but I am Tuliquita, and my claim is Hollywood Drift at Hollywood will be a better ride than Hollywood Drift at Orlando. Peace. I'll see you guys in the next one.